Hello, and welcome to yoga. My name is Christiana. This practice today is for absolute beginners. This is for the very first time you have ever done yoga. I'll be sharing some alignment tricks, the basic postures you'll need to know before you go into any practice. So first we're going to start off in a cross-legged seated position. You can either have one foot up in half lotus or both feet up in full lotus, or you can sit with your legs cross-legged really close in, or have them far out in front of you, or if that's not comfortable, you can also sit on your heels in hero's pose. So go ahead and find a comfortable seated position, shut down the eyes, and we'll start to tap into yoga. When you have your eyes closed and your palms up during yoga, it's a gesture of surrender and of being open to whatever the class has to teach you. So take a few deep breaths in a comfortable seated position with your palms up. Now we're going to go into our first pose that you'll find in yoga called child's pose, and this is the pose that you can come back to whenever things are getting a little too intense or too difficult for you. So you're going to bring your big toes to touch and then spread your knees out as wide as your mat, or if that's not comfortable, you can bring your knees in close, fold forward, over your knees, over your legs, bring your forehead to the mat and take in some deep breaths. You're going to start breathing into your lower back, into the sides of your back, and you'll notice that in child's pose you can really feel the sides of your waist stretch out. That's the exact position you want to be in for all your breathing in yoga. So now go ahead and bring your arms out in front of you and tent your fingers up into spiders. And then you're going to pull yourself up into something called tabletop pose. Line up your wrists directly underneath your shoulders and your knees directly under your hips, the neutral back. And then drop your belly and look up. Breathe in. And then start to tip your tailbone downwards so far that it actually curves your spine up and makes your head hang down, and you'll exhale. Drop the belly, lift the gaze, inhale, exhale, round the back, inhale, chin up, look up, exhale, round the spine, chin to chest. This is called cat-cow. This is usually how you'll wake up the spine at the beginning of most yoga classes. Now go ahead and sit back on your heels. Bring your big toes to touch. We're going to go back down into child's pose. Rest here for a few breaths, trying to breathe into that lower back. Spread your fingers wide on the mat, like starfish. Now go ahead and tent your fingers up again, and bring your hands off to the right side of your mat. Put your left palm on top of your right hand, and breathe into that stretch in the left side body. And then repeat the same thing on the other side. Bring your palms over to the left side of your mat, your right hand on top of your left hand, and breathe into your right body stretch. Big deep breath in. Bring your hands back to the center of the mat. Come back to a seated position and meet me in tabletop pose. Now you're going to tuck your toes and slowly lift your hips up to the ceiling. Your knees can be bent any amount here. And then you're going to pedal your feet out, getting some opening in the back of your legs. This pose is called downward facing dog. You can let your heels fall to the right And let them fall to the left. You'll get a nice stretch in the side legs here, the outer legs. This pose is very difficult for beginners. It requires actually a lot of arm strength and mobility to be able to do this without getting red in the face. So slowly go ahead and step, baby steps, up to the middle of your mat and just hang heavy here. You can grab onto opposite elbows and sway side to side. Shake your head no, nod it yes. And then you're going to put your palms on top of your thighs and stretch out your spine as straight as it can go, and inhale in real big. Exhale, fold forward, let it go. And then on the next inhale, you're going to come up to standing, bring your hands in front of you, hands up to the ceiling, look up at the fingertips, and then bring the palms together, bring them down the center line, down into the front of your chest for mountain pose. Push in with all four corners of your feet into the mat, push those hips out, lengthen the tailbone down towards the floor, lift up the crown of the head, and then circle the shoulders back, shoulder blades melt down the spine, open up the palms to shine forward like you have flames coming out of your palms. And then just breathe here. Mountain pose is another one of the big ones that you'll do in yoga a lot. You start most sequences with it and end most sequences with it. Stand at the top of your mat in mountain pose. And now inhale, lift your arms up, look at your fingertips. Exhale, forward fold down to your mat. Inhale, straighten your back, put your hands on your shins or your thighs. And then exhale, we're going to come down into plank pose. So make sure your wrists are underneath your shoulders again and your legs are straight behind you. Go ahead and push those heels back as far as you can towards the back of the room, back of the mat. In one smooth motion, lower yourself all the way straight down to the mat. And we're going to do a couple of back bends. So the first one that we do is called Cobra Pose, where you keep your palms directly underneath your shoulders and lift up using nothing but your lower back. But that's a little more advanced, so the easiest one is actually called Seal Pose. You'll put your palms on the outside of the mat, a little further up and a little further out, and then push up with your hands, pull up with the spine, look up with the head, and then exhale, let it all back down to the mat. Bring your palms back underneath your shoulders, tuck your toes, come back through Child's Pose, and then push those hips up to the ceiling in Downward Dog. Now walk up to the front of your mat. Inhale, hands to the thighs, straight back. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, bring your arms up overhead, glance up at your thumbs. Exhale, bring it down through center, through prayer, into mountain pose. Roll those shoulder blades back, palms of the hands shining forward. We're going to do something now called chair pose. You'll stand with your big toes touching, your knees touching, and then go like you're sitting in a chair. Bring your hips back. You'll notice that your chest starts to splay outwards, so tuck those lower ribs in together. And then if the arms are a little too close to your neck, too close to your ears, open them out in front of you and then bring the palms back up. You can also rotate your pinky fingers into each other to get a real nice opening across the upper back. After you've stayed here for a few seconds, a few breaths, you're going to bring your hands back down to the mat. Inhale, straight back, palms on the thighs. Exhale, forward fold, and then meet me in Downward Dog. You can pedal out the feet too if your legs are still a little tired. Bring your right foot to the front of your mat. You can use your hands to bring it forward, and then flatten your back left foot onto the mat. Go ahead and inhale your arms up off the mat into arrow pose, and then using all your strength, bring yourself up. Put your arms up to the ceiling. This is called Warrior One. You're going to try and keep your hips as square to the front of the room as possible. And then open up into Warrior Two. Arms straight out, equal tension. And this is called Triangle Pose. Go ahead and straighten that right leg, and you're going to bring your hand down anywhere on that right leg to help pull up with that left hand up to the ceiling so that it's more an act of stability and strength to keep you there rather than dumping all of your weight into the front right leg. Bring your hands down to the mat. Go ahead and go back into plank position. And then lower all the way in one piece down to the mat. Bring your palms out in front and to the side of the mat. Push yourself up into seal pose, look up, exhale, bring it all back down. Go through child's pose, back into downward dog. And you're going to bring your left foot forward. You can use your hands to bring it in between your palms. Flatten that right foot, lift up with the arms into an arrow pose, and then lift your hands up to the ceiling, lift the whole body up into Warrior One. And then we'll open it up into Warrior Two. Open the hips to the side of the room. You want your arms to feel like they're being pulled equally to the back of the room and the front of the room. Go ahead and straighten out the front leg. Reach with your left palm to the front, and then let yourself fall to the side. Imagine someone's trying to pull you up with your right hand to the ceiling. This will help stability in the core. Go ahead and bring your hands back down to the mat, back into plank position, one strong line from the heel to the crown, and let it all go back down to the mat. One more seal pose. Bring your palms out in front of you and to the side, push up. Exhale, bring it down to the mat, tuck the toes, back through child's pose, into downward dog, and then walk up to the front of your mat. Inhale, palms on thighs, straight back. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, arms up overhead, look at your thumbs. Exhale, palms in prayer, down through the center line. We'll be doing a balancing pose next. This is called tree pose. There's a few different ways to do it. Standing in the middle of your mat, the first variation is just to bring your heel to the inside of your ankle. You can keep bringing the sole of the foot up higher and higher until you get to the top of your inner thigh. Really press with your inner thigh and the sole of your foot together to create a really strong center line. You can either have your hands in prayer in front of you, or you can open them up with the palms facing the ceiling. Look at something ahead of you on the wall, something a little higher than you are, and that'll really help keep the spine long and straight. And we'll repeat the same thing on the left side. Bring your sole to the inside of your leg. Keep trying it higher and higher until you find a good spot for it where you can keep your balance, but it's still a little iffy. And look up at a point. Fantastic. Let it all down, and then jump your feet out about 2 feet from each other. Toes pointing outward. Inhale your palms up overhead, and then squat down. This is called garland pose, malasana. Push your knees out with your elbows, and keep your palms in prayer. Go ahead and glance up if that's okay for your neck. And then when you're ready, push up using your heels. Hands in prayer, go to the ceiling. Come all the way to standing, heel to your feet back together, hands in prayer at heart center. Now let's meet at the front of your mat. Let's go into chair pose. Remember, big toes touch, knees touch. Go ahead and sit down as low as you can. Tuck those inner ribs together. Hands straight up to the ceiling, and then as slow as you can, bring your bum down to the ground. And we're just going to roll back and forward on our spine on the mat a little bit. And meet me in downward dog. We're going into something called pigeon pose here. So go ahead and bring your right knee behind your right wrist. Straighten that left leg, untuck the toes. And then you're just going to forward fold over that bent leg any amount. If your heel needs to be closer to your hips, that's fine. But if you can also parallel your shin to the front of your mat, that's great. When you forward fold, you can either rest on your forearms or you can rest on the backs of your hands. If this position is really uncomfortable though, you can actually do the same twist lying on your back. So go ahead and lay on your back, bring your left foot on the ground, your left sole on the ground, and your right ankle crosses over your left knee. First thing you can do is you can push out with your right hand on your right knee, and then slowly bring that left knee in to you. Just make sure that your shoulders stay on the mat the whole time you're down here. What you're working is your hips and your hip flexors. Not too much in the back, in the spine or upper spine. And whether you are in classic pigeon or supine pigeon, let's go ahead and meet all together back in downward dog. So from classic pigeon pose, you're going to tuck those back toes, put your palms down on the mat, and then push yourself into downward dog. Go ahead and bring your left knee behind your left wrist, straighten that right leg, untuck the toes, and then you can bend forward any amount. And your heel can either be towards your hips or your shin can be parallel to the front of your mat. Rest here on your forearms or your forehead on your hands. Or if it's uncomfortable, go ahead and do the same thing like you did on the other side. So put the right sole of your foot on the mat, your knee facing up to the ceiling, and then cross your left ankle over your right knee. And you can either push that left knee down with your left hand, or you can bring the right knee into your chest, any amount, and just play around with it, see what feels good for you. If you're in classic pigeon, you're going to go ahead and lift yourself back up. You're going to tuck those back right toes, and then we'll all meet in downward dog. We're going to meet in something called butterfly pose. So you'll bring the soles of your feet together, your knees splayed outward. If your knees are too high, then your feet are probably too close to your hips, so just bring them out a little further in front of you. If it's comfortable for you, you can put your hands behind you so that your fingertips are facing your toes. Open up your chest, peek up at the ceiling. Breathe into that chest and hip opening that's happening there. Now open up your legs as wide as they can go. If they don't go very wide, that's totally fine. Make sure you remove the flesh out from your seat and then just bend forward any amount. You want your toes facing up to the ceiling, heels pushing outward. And now we'll do some simple twists. So bring your right ankle to your left hip, cross your left leg over the right, and then twist to the left. And if you can't tuck your elbow on the outside of your knee, you can also just grab your knee with that hand. We'll do the same thing on the other side. On your inhales, try and bring your crown to the ceiling. Exhales, twist a little further. Now bring your knees up to the ceiling, and we're just going to lower slowly on our backs onto the mat. Great job. This is called constructive rest. So you're going to line up the outer blades of your feet with the outer edges of your mat and knock your knees in together. You can put your hands on your hips, on your lower belly, and just feel how relaxing this pose is. You've been doing so much. We're going to go into bridge pose. This is one of the final poses in yoga. So bring your feet back in, toe heel them together so that your ankle is in line with your hip bones. And then on an inhale, you're going to push in with the soles of your feet into the mat, lift up the hips towards the ceiling. You can either have your palms pushing into the mat or shining up to the ceiling, or you can grab the sides of your mat and try and rip your mat in half. That'll really open up the chest. And then slowly, vertebrae by vertebrae, you're going to bring your spine back down to the mat. And then we're going into happy baby pose. So bring your knees into your chest and then grab your ankles or your shins or the arches of your feet and just sway side to side here. Sometimes the teacher will instruct people to go into a shoulder stand. And shoulder stand is pretty dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So I recommend waterfall pose instead. It's also something that you can do instead of shoulder stand if you're menstruating or pregnant or have any indigestion. And since we're here and talking about waterfall pose, and I've got a wall, I just wanted to show you can also do waterfall pose against the wall. This is a great thing to do after a long day on your feet, after a run, after doing a lot of gardening, anything where your legs can be tired. And then as an added bonus, you can also open up your legs and let gravity help you with your straddle stretch. Sometimes I'll just hang out here and scroll through Instagram for 20 minutes. And you definitely see some results in these stretches for sure. Using your hands, bring your legs back together, and then go ahead and lay all the way back down on your mat. You're going to bring your knees into your chest, grab your knees with your left hand, your left arm, and bring them out to the left side. Straighten that right arm and look over your right shoulder. It's always important to look the other direction in your twists. This really helps the spine twist as much as it can go. And just find something you're holding on to here, and on an exhale, let it go. All right, bring your knees back to center. You're going to grab them with your right hand or your right arm and bring your knees over to the right side. The closer your knees can stay into your chest, the safer it is for your lower back. And if you don't have enough space to stretch your left arm out to the side of you, you can actually just have it overhead, but still look over to the opposite side from where your knees are stretching. Inhale it back to center. And then we're going to go into Shavasana, our final pose. So lay flat on your back. Have your heels out toward the outer corners of your mat, legs falling open, arms open, hands about a foot away from your body, palms shining back up to the ceiling, and you can let everything go here. You don't have to stretch anything. You don't have to shine those fingertips out. Just let it all go. You'll relax here for about 10 breaths. If you find your mind wandering, just focus on the breath again, bring it back. You're trying to keep your mind totally clear here, just feeling all the goodness that you've done for your body. The last thing you want to do in Shavasana is judge yourself. If you find your thoughts are turning judgmental, just tell yourself thanks for showing up to yoga today, that everyone starts somewhere, and that you should congratulate yourself for even showing up. So to come out of Shavasana, you're going to wiggle your fingers and your toes. You'll rotate your ankles and your wrists. Go ahead and give yourself a nice long stretch, arms overhead. If they can't go straight, you can just grab onto opposite elbows. And then keeping your eyes closed, roll over to one side into a fetal position. Try and curl into as tight of a ball as you can. And if you haven't done so already, now is the time you really should thank yourself for showing up to yoga today. Push yourself up into a seated position, trying to keep your eyes closed if you still can. Feel your body, feel your sit bones ground into the earth. Bring your palms together at your chest and feel your sternum push into your thumbs. We're going to end together on an Om. So inhale in. Remember that there is a light in you that no one can take away. The divinity in me recognizes the divinity within you. Namaste.